You're listening to Amazing Radio. This is Amazing Afternoons. I am delighted to be joined on the line by Duncan Wallace, the frontman of Dutch Uncles, one of my favorite bands and someone I've very happily shared a stage with many times as well. And yeah, it's really nice to have you on the show, Duncan. And it's exciting that you've got a new record coming out.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. First of all, Frankie. Yes, it's. I was thinking about how we cut our teeth in the Casbah in Coventry for the very first time. As soon as you were giving me that intro, but thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah, we should just give a bit of context there. My band, Frankie and the Heartstrings. Our first proper tour was with the Future Heads and Dutch Uncles, and then we kind of like kept in touch from then on in. Really, you already had a record out at that point, didn't you?
Yeah, we really kind of fast tracked our way into. I suppose it was the industry at that point. Yeah, we basically we caught wind of an opportunity to make an album out in Germany. There was a German label based in Hamburg. They really wanted a Manchester band on their roster. They were in talks with the manager we had at the time. So all these things just kind of fell into place, really. If we weren't from Manchester, we probably wouldn't have made that album, like in many ways, which is it's not a downer to say. I don't think it was just the chance of where it was all at. So yeah, we already had an album before people had even heard of us, and we kind of, in a way, we viewed it as sort of a professional demo. I think it was an extraordinary recording experience. We had to go out to Hamburg to use this studio because the label had it, for good money. But it was incredible. It was called Clouds Hill Recordings. I remember after we'd been there, Bombay Bicycle Club went in there to make their album A Different Kind of Fix, and yeah, you could tell. Well, I mean, again, I don't want to slate anyone's reputation, but you could tell they weren't using the in-house. You could tell they weren't making the whole thing in about 10 days, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I remember being incredibly jealous of that. Turning up, I was like, these guys have got an album and it's on vinyl, and I was like, oh God, we've got a lot to do.
Import
Yeah.
import price though.
Yeah. Yes,
You know what
indeed.
I mean?
Yes. But now you are
The
about
record show he's doing the money sign.
exactly. But how much has changed? Because you're about to embark on the campaign, I guess, of your sixth album, I think it is, coming out in early
It is
next year.
six.
And you must
Yeah.
have seen so much change in the industry in that time, Duncan.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I, I don't want to. Again, I don't want to get on any sort of down tones here or anything, but thinking about the history of the when we've released albums, our discography, it's kind of been a slow deterioration of the process and the industry throughout from one thing to the next. So, of course, there's that German album we just mentioned, which kind of happened before anyone noticed. So we treated it like a professional demo. Then, when we finally did like our first UK release on Memphis Industries, uh, just as the album was about to come out, we had the was it the 2011 riots, I believe,
Yes,
in
yes.
the UK, and the one warehouse that got burnt down in London during those riots was the one holding all of our records. So that just had to all get written off. I think it cost or whatever. And then the next time we released an album, HMV went into administration like in the same week. So all the albums they had, we didn't get any money back for that. I mean, I'm not trying to make it about us. What I'm trying to say is that every time, I mean, we had there were personal problems on the next album, and then the one after that, well, basically Brexit happened. So with every album release that happens, everything gets a little worse. So I feel bad about the fact that we're doing another one in a way, because it definitely
Well,
felt like I think you're right. Like the industry's totally changed shape, and between this new album and the last album we did, it definitely felt like a time where I mean, I wanted to take a break personally because I just couldn't face buying another notepad basically for a bit. 5 albums in less than 10 years just felt like too much, going too fast. But then also at that stage in life, as I say, like constitutional crisis was just really starting to peak at that point in the country. But obviously, and that affects, economically, it was affecting the industry as well. And it definitely felt like a time for not for our voice to, it wasn't time for another like math pop record to be coming out. Certainly not to my ears anyway. So I was glad we took the time out really, and it kind of felt like now. I mean, this record got made during lockdown basically. Had it not been for lockdown, I'm not sure True Entertainment would have been made essentially. But yeah, definitely seen the industry change.
So what was the process on this record then? You said it was written essentially during lockdown. Where were you and how did you get together and where was it finished and who with and all that?
Yeah, well, this has been obviously we've been talking about 10, 12 years here of making records, and in a bizarre way, I think making this latest album very much gone back to how we used to write songs before we were even Dutch uncles. In a way, we always had a very mechanical process, really. Rob, the bassist, he would always bring his musical ideas via Sibelius. So when he's showing us a song, we're listening to 5 instruments that all sound like pianos, basically being played out of a computer. We're just going, I think we can make that happen. It was always that kind of process. And then I'd write my lyrics separately to that. And so when it came to making this 6th album, I think basically I hadn't written lyrics for about 3 years. I'd totally given up on the idea, but it just seemed like the time was there to do something, because you got to do something, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, job wise, certainly. So Rob sent me just a few tracks that he was still working on, and I'm trying to remember how it really happened. Really, I had to have a bit of a breakthrough myself. I had to essentially we wrote the whole thing without ever really seeing each other that much. Well, certainly in the earlier phase of the writing, the key tracks, the songs that you really start to realize, okay, we have a body of work here. So like the first half of the album, first 4 or 5 tracks, really, we wrote without being able to see each other because of lockdown. We'd occasionally all see each other in a park before a football game, in the dead of winter, when that was probably illegal. Actually, I shouldn't do that. Shouldn't even mention it. But apart from that, we weren't able to, play music together, do anything like that. But thankfully, it kind of played into how we'd grown as a band anyway. So it didn't feel like that strange a process to me. And so when we finally got around to demoing stuff, we already had, as I say, at least half the album done. And it was just a case of going, right, does that work? Okay, we got to move quickly here, because we know that there's queues for pressing plants, there's queues for recording. Everything's built up so much that we essentially did run out of time, I think, in a way. That's the one thing you want to give yourself. You want to have that time to finish an album appropriately, in your own time, in your own space. But we still had to rush that process slightly. But that will always happen. And yeah, I think we basically, before we went into the studio in Wales, where we'd recorded previous albums, Giant Wafer Studios, before we went there to actually record the album, as it is, I think we only had time for one band practice, the 6 of us. There was only one band practice where the 6 of us actually did it, just because work was starting to take, we all have jobs now. We treat the band it's still a career, but we treat it with less pressure.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we're doing it because we want to do it. And so that kind of brings more integrity back to the writing, I think. Because if you're doing it because you feel like you have to just make a PRS payment happen, then you're always going to compromise what you're doing. So I'm glad we've stuck to our guns on that. But as I say, because work was going on, we only had time for one practice before doing the album, and I do wish we'd maybe done about 3 or 4, just so I could know where my voice was sitting on some of the tracks, because basically I've made it happen in the studio, but now we're rehearsing now, and I'm just like, wow, that really doesn't sit. I'm gonna have to completely rethink what I've done there, and how can you do that when you've already recorded it? It's a very strange process. That's the strange bit. Figuring out how to do it live, that's the hardest bit now.
Yeah, because you've announced some dates as well next year. We'll come on to that in a second. But from the single True Entertainment, which I was very excited about, and I made it my single of the week, I think it sounds, to me, I think it's some of your best songwriting and lyrics wise, Duncan. I think it's really considered. I think you've obviously taken time over that, and you've really perfected your craft, and you've always had this delivery which is unique, but I think it's been really considered on this single as well. And I'm so excited to hear more of what's going to be on this record.
Oh, that's incredible. Thanks, Frankie. I mean, yeah, I think I don't want to make it out like a fluke or anything of that nature, but with this first single, with True Entertainment, it definitely feels like, I was thinking about it before, because I knew I was going to be talking about it. And I was like, how did it all come around, really? Because essentially, and I'm sure you'd agree with this in terms of how songwriting kind of comes around occasionally. I was listening to that song on my way to a band practice. Sorry, a band meeting. I was on my way to a band meeting in the great summer of 21. So we were only about 2 or 3 months away from recording the whole album. So that song hadn't even sort of come around yet. But I was on my way to a meeting at Rob's house, and I had it on in my headphones. And full disclosure, I was a little drunk. It was the summer. It was a wild time. You know, finals had happened, or whatever had happened. And yeah, the top line of the chorus basically just came to me, the Mr. Right Side of Tragic Ends. And I was like, it's one of those things where, right, okay, well, I've got that line and it's kind of deliciously close to copyright breach. So let's go with it. And then you have to kind of decide, well, what's that all about? And I realized it's not to be too self sort of obsessed about kind of, you know, narratives or things like that, but I realized it's kind of a good, like, it felt like a good indicator to be like, well, where on earth have we been in all this time, you know, but not to hammer it home too much. And obviously throughout everyone's jobs, I've had the most public facing one, probably. I DJ, I host and write pub quizzes, I even do karaoke nights. I did one last night, in fact. And so yeah, basically it was about that sort of that awkward moment where people recognize you from, you know, people are, you know, sometimes you get like big fans coming to those things or bumping into you in those moments going, oh my god, I didn't realize you did this, is everything okay? You know, it's usually kind of like the first point of call. There's like just like a natural air of tragedy to you if you're doing, like, it's a really fun job. I love doing my job. I love DJing. I love doing the quizzes. I love doing all that stuff. And it's unfortunate that it all sort of kind of becomes this real life Partridge figure. So basically, anyway, as I go back to it, I was a little drunk. That first line came around. I was like, right, okay, just keep going through it. And then I basically riffed it like the rappers would. You know, like how Jay-Z never writes down his lyrics. He just kind of listens to a song over and over again. He tries to just get his lines in place. So I'm pretty sure I had like the first verse and a chorus by the time I got around to Rob's house. And I just knew, like, this is going to be a special track, whether it's a single, whether it's an opener. It felt like it was just going to be an opener, really. But it was that moment where I just kind of reached a certain level of fluidity and, you know, coincidental, I don't want to call it genius, but intelligence, you know, just a moment where everything just clicked. It reminded me of, I was thinking about it before, I did physics as an A-level. Well, I tried to. And the one time I did homework correctly was after a night at the SU and I had a lesson the next day. I don't know, you know what I mean? Every time I actually tried, it never actually landed. But just that one time, you just relaxed enough, the right words just come along. So anyway, that's a big answer for you. Apologies, I've had 3 coffees.
It's totally fine, and it's the answer I wanted, because we love that track, and it's really nice to hear how it came about. So you've the record's going to be coming out in March, and sticking with tradition, some things don't change. You're going to be playing some shows around that. I imagine you're looking forward to getting back out on the road with the guys as well. I'm looking forward to seeing you in my native Sunderland as well, which is on the tour poster as well. But it's going to be nice to get back in the van, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, we had it licked, I think, on the last album. We certainly we seem to tour less and less and less with each album that comes out.
I think that's everyone.
Fine.
That's everyone. I think.
Yeah. I think that is everyone. You're right, and it's absolutely fine with me personally as well. And I recall with the last album we did like our headline tour, and then Glastonbury was pretty much the first festival we did, like, of that festival run, and it was the first time we ever played Glastonbury, and that was the moment of going, oh my god, right, we've made it now. I have nothing left to prove to myself. Anything that comes after this is a wonderful bonus. But after all the festivals we did after Glastonbury, they became like, I don't want to say mini stag do's, but the combination of Greg's and Buck's Fizz
sounds like lads on tour.
Yeah. Every morning, like, we finally got all that down properly. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. I mean, it probably won't be that like on a Wednesday morning, going all the way down to Brighton. Probably not going to take it that far. But no, I mean, starting the tour with Sunderland, I mean, it's a rite of passage. I cannot wait to come back. It's a second home to us. We've had so much encouragement, support, and great times every time we've been up to the Northeast, generally speaking. But as we said, like before, we met on that Future Heads tour. I think the way that Barry Hyde really took to us in those early years, like it was so impressionable to us, and we learned so much through it all. And obviously meeting everyone else throughout the scene, yourselves, Field Music, Paul Smith, etc. Like playing the first Split Festival. I think there's just so much tied there that I can't wait. I think I'm more excited about playing Pop Rex than I am Manchester. I'm just going to put it out there. I am. I cannot. I honestly cannot wait. I can't wait to see how the new Pop Rex looks as well. Just like the photos, it looks stunning. So I cannot wait to hopefully not mess up in it.
Yeah. No, it's good. You'll have a good time there, as you will on all the tour dates, I'm sure, as well.
Oh, yeah.
And just talking about some differences there, you mentioned, some of the coffee and the book fast and whatever like that. I remember having a conversation. I remember having a conversation with David from Field Music, and it was kind of like in the lines of, well, you know what it's like. It's frustrating when you haven't got time to nip to the shop for some cans before you get in the van and stuff like that. And he was like, dude, like we have arguments if I forget to bring my homemade muesli. No, so I just thought that's a big difference between Field Music and Frankie the Heartstrings there.
I know. I've always been stunned by David's keenness to be be the driver for he's tour managed himself, he
does everything
many times in the past, yeah. And I've just felt like, I mean, full respect to it all, because I mean the London to Sunderland drive,
oh my goodness,
I don't even want to imagine like the extra hours that is. I mean, doing it to Manchester is long enough.
Yeah, I was always jealous of the Yorkshire, Lancashire bands, what we do often spend a lot of time with on tour or whatever, because they were like 2.5, 3 hours away from London. We've got another 2.5 on top of that as well. But you got to feel for the guys from Aberdeen when they've got to do a London show.
Oh yeah, I remember, because we are of that age. I remember like hearing about the View. Weren't the View all the way from Inverness? Is that right?
Or maybe or Dundee. There was definitely a band from Aberdeen called Copy Hey-Ho. Can you remember them? Copy Hey-Ho.
Yeah.
I was once in earshot of them once, and I said something like, we've got to get away. We've got like 6-hour drive after this. We're from the Northeast. And one of them pulled me to one side and said, we're from the Northeast. I was like, yeah, fair play. Another 5 hours on top of where we live.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, like from what I heard, if you're a band based beyond Edinburgh, essentially, you're just getting a train. You just have to pay someone to like just drive it down in a separate van. But the group themselves, you just got to train it if you can. Obviously, you can't now, in terms of pricing and stuff. It just wouldn't be economically possible now. But like, I don't know how else you could do it, like other than literally giving yourself a full driving day just to kind of get nearby.
Well, I should say at this point as well, listeners might be interested to check out Chips of Charlton podcast, which I think is making a bit of a comeback as well, which you've also been doing in the last couple of years as well. But you kind of speak to musicians and people within the industry about these kind of things, don't you, Duncan?
Yeah, we do. We just try to, I suppose it's not myth busting, is it? It's just basically getting round to like,
it's truth exposing. It's truth exposing the industry for what it really is.
Exactly. Yeah, that and also the real and really getting to ground with the smells of the road and things of that nature. Like how does it really age you? Let's count the crow's feet and all that lot. We're slowly bringing that back. Lockdown, we had to stop doing it because we just couldn't get a good internet connection. Basically, we were trying to mimic the match of the day top tens list. We were going to try and do a thing like that just because it seemed. I wasn't quite sure what to make of those things. I was like, we can do that with like debut albums and or like bands that only released one album ever. Those kind of we'll just find quirkier and quirkier things and we'll just do top tens. But we couldn't get the internet connection, so we're just like, all right, well we'll just put it on ice for a bit. And then of course the album came in. So then that's where all of the time that we had to focus on band stuff had to go into the album. But now that we're here, like. Yeah, we're trying to bring it back and we're trying to make it a bit more sort of not like a Dutch Uncle's Diary, but I think the fact that I'm really relieved that we do have an album in the sense that because I felt as if imposter syndrome was starting to kick in with the podcast, because I was like, well, if we don't have music out ourselves, and we're not really a big enough name to be like, grandees of this, like, I feel like, we need to get ourselves back into the motions, just so we can talk about our experiences now to how they were then, as well as talking to guests about it. So yeah, we're trying to, I think we're getting back to like a weekly to fortnightly rhythm of the podcast coming back. Chip reviews are going to be thin on the ground. Well, we keep doing chippy chips, and it's kind of it's playing havoc with most of us now. So I think now, next time we do a chip review, I think we're only going to eat one chip each.
Okay.
Like, you got to do it like you got to do it like MasterChef. You got to get your Greg Wallace on with John Turret. You got to get your John Turret on.
But you're going on tour soon. That's a perfect opportunity to get some reviews.
Yeah, well, exactly. We've asked people where, in terms of where we're going to, where should we try chips? So we will do that, but we're just going to get one portion of chips. We're going to be sensible about this, because we've already got a hot meal on the rider. So
yeah,
like as I say, we've got Bucks, Fizz, and Greg's to we've got to watch those waistlines.
Yeah, it's you can't live on those 1 a.m. McDonald's all your life, Duncan.
Oh, the criddles. Oh yeah, that'll be happening.
Right, we've probably taken up enough of your time, and I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed listening to you, but hopefully we can catch up with you when you are in the Northeast, well, near me at Amazing Radio. But of course, anyone can see you on tour. Where's the best place to go, Duncan, to see the tour dates?
I have no idea. I'm
just the internet, I guess.
Yeah, the internet, our Facebook page, our Twitter, our Instagram. We got Instagram now, and I believe we have TikTok as well. I'm not in charge of it, obviously, but I believe we have all these things.
Fantastic.
So so I think Pete's in charge of it. Pete knows how to get engagement going on and all that.
He's got his finger on the pulse, says Pete.
He's got his he's got his finger on the hashtags, definitely. So so that's going on. You can find it all those places. Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I think I know how to do this.
You do, and it's been a pleasure to chat to you, Duncan. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Frankie.